Hello and welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today is Women's Prize Longlist Announcement Day, and for the past 2 years I have done, I've read the shortlist for the Women's Prize for Fiction, and mixed bag there. The first year that I did it in 2021, I really enjoyed most of the books. Last year, wasn't a big fan of quite a few of them, so definitely a mixed bag last year, but I still had a lot of fun doing it and read some books that I wouldn't have read otherwise, and many of those were ones that I really enjoyed. So this year I am hoping to do the same, though we will see with all the competing priorities in my life currently, but that's the goal. So the prize is going to be announced, or the long list for the prize is going to be announced in 2 hours. And I just wanted to share a couple of my wish fors and then ones I think are likely to be there. So I'll start with the ones I think are likely to be there. So I do think that Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver is likely to be on this list. A lot of hype for this one, and I think I've seen it on most long list predictions so far. Another one I think has a good chance is Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I didn't really love this book, but it is getting a lot of attention, and I do think that it's something that could potentially make the list. Although, because the focus is, in my opinion, more heavily on the male character, I think that there is a potential for it to not make it because it doesn't feel like a women's prize book. So that one I think could go either way. I also think that Night Crawling by Layla Motley has a good chance of being there. That one's gotten a lot of acclaim, and I also think that it is something that fits kind of the women's prize feeling, if you will, for the kinds of things that they typically choose for the long list. I think Maggie O'Farrell's The Marriage Portrait has a good chance of being there. She is a former prize winner, and when you have I think it's shortlisted author, definitely a winner, the publisher gets to submit, I think, any of their books so that have been published within the time frame. So I do think that that one has a good chance. I also just read it and can't talk too much about it because it is in my BookTube prize grouping, but having read it, I think it has an even better chance of being there. And then as far as books that I personally want to see there, I would love to see Briefly a Delicious Life there, because this is so far my favorite book of the year. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous book, and I also think it is a very, very women's prize book. So I am very hopeful it'll be there, but that's the one I would really, really like to see there. Other books that I would like to see there are Stoneblind by Natalie Haynes. This one, I don't know if we've run our course with the mythology retellings, but Natalie Haynes has been on the long list before, and I think she's an incredible writer, so I would love to see this one there. I think Horse by Geraldine Brooks is likely, and also one that I would like to read, so would be happy to see that there. A couple of books that I kind of have seen and heard a little bit about, but not a whole lot, and the Women's Prize always seems to have 1 or 2 books that I've absolutely never heard of, so never going to predict them all, but a couple of books that I think have gotten less hype but I think are potentials are The Other Mother and Dinosaurs. So both of these I would be interested in reading if they were on there, but they're kind of my wild cards. So those are my thoughts so far, and we'll see what gets on there. The Women's Prize for Fiction long list was announced today, and I am really surprised by it. I say every year that there are a lot of books, or at least a handful of books on there that I've never heard of, but this year there was a lot of books I'd never heard of. Some of them I had heard of in passing, but not really known much about. But there are genuinely quite a few I've never even heard of. I have read 2 of them. So I have read The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. I actually just finished this yesterday. Loved it. This one I predicted would be on the list, and it was. And then I have also read The Bandit Queens by Parini Sharoff. And I was very pleasantly surprised to see this here. This didn't occur to me as something that would be on there. I guess I hadn't also thought about its publication date in the UK, and let me just say the UK cover is so much cuter. I like this cover, but the UK cover is stunning on this one. This book is about a woman who is suspected to have killed her husband, and it's in like a small Indian town, and this, because people think she killed her husband, it gives her a level of protection as a single woman. And then other women start coming to her to solicit her assistance with killing their husbands. And that premise sounds like really hilarious and hijinksy, and like this could be very funny and lighthearted in like a dark humor kind of way. I do want to say this is a lot darker than the covers or the blurb do it justice. So I want people going into this to know that. This, to me, is akin to... I'm just blanking on the book. I'll put the 2 covers up here. These 2 books from previous long lists are books that I would associate with the kind of content you should expect to see in this book. So big trigger warnings here for domestic abuse. And yeah, so this is fantastic. I look forward to seeing what a lot of people think of it. My book club loved this. I actually was in the minority of not like loving it. But after book club, I really had a different perspective. So yes, happy to see that one on there. I think it definitely deserves it, and I'm kind of mad I didn't think of it. I also am thrilled to see Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes on there. This is a book that I plan to read relatively soon. I'm still trying to finish up BookTube prize reading in time for the deadline, but this is one that I hope to pick up before the end of March. And this is a Medusa retelling. Natalie Haynes does kind of feminist retellings of Greek mythology, and I loved 1,000 Ships, which I think was on the long list for the Women's Prize 2 years ago. And so yeah, this was one of the ones that I predicted or hoped would be on there, and I'm glad to see that it is. Another book that I predicted would be on there and was is Demon Copperhead. Just like everybody else, I want to say Demon Copperfield because it's kind of like there's a play there between David Copperfield, Demon Copperhead. This book doesn't really appeal to me. I've only tried to read one Barbara Kingsolver, and I didn't really get along with it. And so I'm not overly interested in picking this one up. I also will be honest and say that like Appalachian fiction is not a thing that I generally reach for. I live in like the Appalachian area of the US, and having worked in communities like the one this book is set in, it can sometimes feel too close to home to read about. So this one I will read if it makes the short list, but it's not one that I'm rushing out to pick up right now, even though I'm pretty sure it's going to be on the short list. There's like a 30-person hold list at my library, so I feel like if I'm going to read it, I'm going to have to buy it. So we'll see how that goes. So let me pull up the rest of the list and we can go through them. Wandering Souls by Celia Penn. This one I think is the one that's set in, it's someone escaping Vietnam. Yes. Yeah. After the last American troops leave Vietnam, siblings begin a perilous journey from Hong Kong with the promise that their parents and young siblings will soon follow. Oh, actually, this I think was on the list of possibilities for the BookTube prize, and that premise sounded really interesting. So this is one that I would be interested in reading. So I will add that to my list. Next is The Dog of the North by Elizabeth Mackenzie. And I feel like this one is, yeah, she wrote The Portable Zeppelin. I have not read that. And this book sounds a little bit like Eat, Pray, Love-y. Like a woman who has like a troubled marriage, quits her job, is in like a not good state of mind, and then like goes traveling in a camper van. That's also not my thing. So this isn't one that I would reach for, but again, my plan is to read the shortlist again this year before the winner is announced. So I might read it. Now, Pod by Laylene Paul is about a dolphin. So it's from the perspective of a dolphin. What's with the women's prize and like weird perspectives. However, this sounds really good. I think it's like climate fiction, and the dolphin like has a form of deafness that prevents her from being like doing the spinning dolphin thing that's like her pod does. And then I think something happens to her family and she leaves the pod, and then we go from there. This sounds super interesting. This is one of the ones that I will be probably picking up. I have looked and my library has basically none of these, which was the opposite from last year. So some of these I will be picking up on an upcoming trip that I go on. And I think Pod is going to be one of them. This one I'm absolutely interested in reading soon. So next is Homesick by Jennifer Croft, and this one is super interesting. So Eric from the channel, Eric Carl Anderson, was talking about the like progression of this book, and Jennifer Croft is a translator. She apparently originally wrote this book in a different language, and then she rewrote it, not translated it, but rewrote it into English, and it was published in the US as a memoir, so as a nonfiction memoir. And then she rewrote it again, and I think the nonfiction memoir, I looked it up in Unnamed Press, which is an indie press in the US. It shows that they published it in 2019, and then apparently she rewrote it again, and it was released in the UK as a fiction novel. So this one perplexes me a little bit because like I have weird feelings about it. Because obviously if I want to read the version that the judges read, then I would have to get it from the UK and get that specific edition, because what's published in the US and is available in the US is apparently a completely different book. So I'm really kind of perplexed by this, because I don't really know what to do as far as reading this one, because I don't want to read what is classified as a nonfiction memoir when I should be reading a fiction novel. So I don't know, I would be curious what people's thoughts are on that, and I think this is one of the ones that I'm gonna hold off on and see if it makes the short list. Fire Rush by Jacqueline Crooks. This is a book about a girl who I believe is like into the rave scene, and there's like a lot of political unrest in this one. This one does sound interesting to me. It's probably not high on my list when I kind of prioritize them, but it does catch my attention. It has a yellow cover, and I love yellow books, which is a superficial thing to say, but it does. Cursed Bread. I have heard about this one kind of like peripherally, and I think this author wrote The Water Cure, which was a book I wasn't really interested in, but this one sounds a little bit more interesting, and it's only 240 pages. And it is about a woman who, she's a baker's wife, and she kind of gets invested in this couple that comes to town, and then weird stuff starts happening, and somehow she is involved in it, but she doesn't realize she is kind of how the blurb goes. So this one sounds really interesting. It's not published in the US until the 4th of April, so I am not sure what I'm going to do about that one, but I would be interested in reading it. Children of Paradise I actually already ordered from Blackwell's because this one sounds right up my alley. It's about a girl who starts working at a crumbling movie theater that's like an old established movie theater with a lot of quirky people that work there, and it's about her like ingraining herself into that, like the culture of this movie theater. And I think maybe, I mean, obviously things happen. So that one sounds really interesting to me, and I did go ahead and order that one from Blackwell's. The other one that I ordered from Blackwell's, because both of these are not available in the US and I didn't see publication dates for them in the US, is Black Butterflies by Priscilla Morris. So this one, and I'm going to have to pull up the blurb because this one I think she's Yugoslavian, or she's part Yugoslavian, part Cornish is I think what I read. But this one takes place in kind of it's in 1992 in Sarajevo, and it is political unrest. It sounds like it's kind of like a trying to get to safety situation. I'm not really sure. But it did sound super interesting and like something I would want to read. So I went ahead and ordered that one. Trespasses by Louise Kennedy is set during the Troubles in Ireland. This one also sounds like something I would want to read. It also sounds really sad and violent potentially. I read The Colony by Maggie. I don't remember the author's name of that one, but it had splices in there of the Troubles, and they were gut-wrenching. So that makes me a little trepidated, gives me a little bit of trepidation about this one, just because I think it will be really heartbreaking. And I think the main protagonist is a teacher in Ireland during this time, so that one I think I will look for as well when I am shopping next week. So Memphis by Tara Stringfellow. This is a book that I had on my most anticipated books list last year, and it is one that the premise sounds really interesting. So the main character, it's sort of like a family saga about the women in her family in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm from Tennessee. So it sounds really interesting. I will say that this is one that I will probably only read if it makes the shortlist, because Tara Stringfellow made kind of a ass of herself on the internet with getting in reviewer spaces and telling them that their opinions and thoughts about the book were wrong, and that they misread things or misunderstood things. And I am a very big proponent of these book review spaces are for book reviewers and for readers. They are not for authors. If you are an author and you choose to go into reviewer spaces, then it is your responsibility as an adult to take those reviews with a grain of salt and to not engage. And so I have reservations about reading this book based on her behavior towards other reviewers. So there is that. Yeah, so if it makes the short list, I will read it, and I will probably get my copy from the library. So there is that. Glory by Noviolet Bulawayo. I actually have her first book, We Need New Names, which I want to say was on the long list of a previous prize. I'm not sure. But I want to read that one first. And I don't feel so interested in Glory because there have been such mixed reviews of it. It's apparently a loosely like it has like an Animal Farm-esque plot to it. And I just don't care for that. But I will reserve judgment. This is one that I'm like on the fence about, so I would love to hear your thoughts if you've read it, and whether or not you think I should prioritize it. And then the last one is I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel, and Simon O. Savage Reads has raved about this book a couple of times, talking about how it's a must read for people who are on Instagram or social media, and how it's about a girl who is having an affair with a man who's having multiple affairs, and then she starts cyber stalking one of the people who's like an influencer, and all about like cyber stalking and influencer culture and stuff like that. So that one sounds really interesting. It's also super short. It's 216 pages. I think it's the shortest one on the list, and it's told in like vignettes. So that's one that I would look at picking up, although I do feel like it is the no one is talking about this book of the list, and I hated that book last year, so I hope it's not like that. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, overall, I am pleasantly surprised. I love about the prize that I tend to find books I've never heard of and read them and enjoy them. So I hope that's the case again this year. I would love to hear what books you are excited about on the list, what didn't make the list for you that you wish did. For me, obviously, that's Briefly a Delicious Life. I love that book. I'm sad for it. But at the end of the day, I'm excited for all of these authors, and you know, you never know what's submitted by the publishers. So yeah, tell me what you think, and I will look forward to talking to you in the comments. Bye!